On an unseasonably warm day in January 2013, a known gang member's infant child died accidentally in Thornton, Colorado. That death triggered uncontrollable grief and drug-fueled violent rage by the father and 4 other gang members. After menacing and shooting at innocent civilians in Aurora and Montbello, the suspects were spotted in a stolen truck in northwest Denver. Then, the most dangerous rolling gun battle in the known history of the Denver Police Department unfolded. In their own words, officers recall their actions that day and share what it means to serve and protect.
That particular time I was assigned to District 1, the SCAT narcotics team.
And I was heading back to the Traffic Operations Bureau.
As we came up to 41st, there was a Honda Accord, and right behind it was the truck.
The TAC car aired that he had seen the truck.
I had that terror of like being in the water and having a shark brush up against you.
So I jumped in my car, got out the gate,
and was in a full sprint out to my patrol car.
And I turned in the intersection to get behind them.
I authorized the chase right away.
I start to hear gunshots.
I got back on the radio and authorized the pit maneuver.
And it takes a minute to register. They're shooting at us.
a lot of cars following it. Sounds like they went back to the west and then they were heading back to the north.
Just literally 2 blocks away, there's a middle school. And it's right at the time the kids are literally getting out, and they're all walking up and down these streets to go home.
I had never seen criminals acting this way, where they were shooting through the front windshield and shooting out the back of a pickup truck.
Everyone was informing dispatcher, I'm headed that way, I'm headed that way, I'm here and I'm headed that way.
The gang car lost contact with him, and then for a short time Carlos Montoya picked him up, then Jeremy picked him up, and then finally Bob Motika picked him up.
The guy in the back raises a gun at me and fires.
I don't think the public always knows that. There are some real bad guys out there sometimes.
The gun seemed like it was that big, and it seemed like a cannon that he was shooting at me.
I turned eastbound around 44th Avenue to start to parallel it.
And the passenger in the truck, he comes out of the truck backwards like this and just starts shooting at me. Well, he's not shooting a revolver, he's got a semi-auto, and it's bam, 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 bam.
And there was no hesitation. They were gonna catch these bad guys.
This was more of a military type of incident, which has no business, no place being in the civilian world.
It was one of my proudest moments on this department, seeing my fellow officers, how courageous I thought they were.
And I'm seeing these people on the street, I'm really concerned. I'm like, in our wake, are there people with just bullet holes in the back of their head laying on the sidewalk and bleeding? And
as we started to head north on Osage, Officer Pete Derrick, I see this, I didn't know it was him at the time, comes flying down southbound on Osage and parks his car in an attempt to, I think, try to block them in.
I'm going to sacrifice my car, use it as a roadblock.
Truck slows down a little bit and veers hard to the right.
I see this officer jump out of the car.
Truck's going right at him.
And was accelerating 35 to 40 miles per hour up onto the sidewalk.
And I don't know how Pete did it, but he got out of the way.
I felt like I was El Matador here.
And then he engaged the truck. He started shooting at it as it drove by.
At that point, I'm just shooting over the top of my gun, front sight pressed, both eyes open, so I could see the pursuing vehicles.
As we drive by, I hear this volley of gunshots.
I don't know how many rounds Pete got off, but it was multiple.
And it completely renewed my faith that the good guys were going to win that day.
I felt that's where we needed to change the tide of this battle.
So we continue northbound on Osage, and this is where, for me, things get real bad.
It was about that time that Sergeant Motika radioed that he had been shot through the windshield.
I've been hit. He's at 39th and Osage, just shot me through the windshield.
When these rounds came through the windshield, it was just a shower of glass. And I don't know how I did it. I turned my head real fast to the right as it was coming, just the reflex, and I could feel all these little pricks, the shower of glass just all the left side of my face. And then I turned back and looked, and I could see the 2 big holes in the windshield. Then I felt this burning, searing pain in my left shoulder and arm. And I looked down, and I could see the blood coming.
And I see that lead car pull to the curb just momentarily.
And I just took my hand off the wheel. I started going like this. Okay, I can still use my hand. I'm good.
And there was no hesitation on Jeremy Olive's part. He immediately swung his car past Motika's and took over that lead position.
And it was about that time that they had radioed that the vehicle had crashed at 39th and Osage.
29th way, we got him at 39th and Osage.
Chase ends, all the cars are kind of offset a little bit.
As they come around the corner, Lieutenant McDonald and Bob are engaging the suspects.
I heard some shots. I ran up next to Bob Motika.
It was like this dark cloud just started closing in on me like this.
The realization that he had been shot was finally really starting to catch up with him.
I'm like, all right, I'm out.
And he said, "John, I've been shot."
So I turned around and I just started walking back towards my police car.
And I can see that Bob's been shot in the arm.
I said, just go get the bad guys.
He was still in the line of fire.
And I just look up and I see Damon walking towards me.
He didn't have body armor on. And I felt like, well, I should put myself in between the gunfire and his body.
And Damon just like put him in my car.
I started to head towards the hospital.
And I go, Damon, I'm sorry for bleeding in your car.
He was apologizing for bleeding in my car.
He just kind of looks at me and chuckles a little bit. He goes, don't worry, it's Danny and Randy's car. So
to see someone that we had talked parenting, we had talked schools, we had talked Christmas programs, sitting in close proximity to me bleeding.
I guess I had my guardian angel with me that day.
I was just scared for Bob, and I was overwhelmed from the situation. And we got to the hospital it had to be less than 2 minutes, but it felt like an hour. And when we pulled up, man, DG was ready.
And at this time, the guy that was in the back of the bed just sits up, like almost something out of a horror movie.
Basically, I took up a position behind the patrol vehicle on the passenger side.
About this time, Mr. Tafoya finds a firearm.
And when he went to the passenger side of that car, he leaned in, or the truck rather, he leaned in and came back out with a gun.
He turns and points the gun in my direction.
The officer said he's got a gun.
Myself and Mott's both fired, and he went down, dropped the gun. Well, the whole situation wasn't over because the gentleman that was in the back of the pickup truck, he's yelling at us that he's going to kill us, and he's just going berserk.
Everybody exercised a lot of discipline and a lot of good sense.
And even after that initial shooting, we still reverted back to trying to do less lethal with the other guy.
Let me see your hands! Do not go in that truck!
Metro showed up. They wound up engaging him with basically a line of Metro officers with shields and the dogs, and they were able to put him down.
That day, we won.
Sergeant Motika, I mean, he's the man, you know. Lead car getting shot at, gets shot, assesses him, does a self-assessment and gets back into the chase. I can't think of a better officer that this department would want. I mean, he's a true hero.
The bad guys ended up as they should. We ended up the way we should. Everybody responsible has been adjudicated. They're, you know, paying society for their crimes and whatnot. So, yeah, it made me real proud that day to see the end result and then to realize how many people were actually involved from the police department and the roles that they had in the whole incident. It was pretty incredible for sure.